Okay, shalom. Right, absolutely incredible subject to cover in this lesson and the following lessons based on the book Daath Tevenath by Ramchal, which is Knowing God's Plan. And this is all about such an important topic. YHVH revealing his absolute sovereignty and his loving kindness for all humanity. Right, let's go read what Ramchal says. It says, Ramchal, by the way, is Rabbi Moshiach Luzzatto, for those who don't know, very famous, well-regarded rabbi. It says in the book, now when YHVH chooses to guide the world through his attribute of judgment, he makes his guidance subservient in a certain way to the actions of man. As a result, man's good deeds cause YHVH to bestow good upon the world. So this is a blessing, whereas his bad deeds cause YHVH to withhold his good from the world. So that's like a curse, or, a lack of abundance. In contrast, when YHVH chooses to run the world purely through his attribute of loving kindness, he makes use of his absolute sovereignty, which is not subservient to any law, that means the commandments, and whether man performs them or not, and is not dependent on the created world, as it says, for my own sake I will act. And that's from Yeshayahu 48:11, which in English is Isaiah 48:11. And then continuing, it says, when YHVH directs the world through his attribute of loving kindness and his absolute authority, not dependent on the deeds of man, he will transmit a divine emanation of holiness to the whole world, which will cause everything to become holy. And that's from chapter 7, part 4. Now, normally, like in the festivals of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we petitioning YHVH to move off his seat of judgment and onto his seat of mercy. Okay, so this is part of the intentions of the entire Rosh Hashanah, which is the head of the year, and the Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. When you go to the synagogue, the prayers and the intentions of that day are to push YHVH onto his mercy seat, his throne of mercy, from off the throne of judgment, so that he will bestow mercy upon the whole of creation rather than harsh judgment. And that's at the individual level, the community level, and the global level, obviously. Okay, so this is even higher than that, because mercy really is when you actually deserve to be punished, but YHVH, in his absolute capacity to bestow mercy, chooses to be merciful in judging that error, and therefore in punishing that error. We're asking for a merciful outcome to our bad deeds and our sin, if you like. But this attribute of loving kindness is even higher, because there's no it's totally and utterly separate from any action that we do. So it's not like a case of bestowing mercy and showing somebody mercy despite them not deserving it. This is nothing to do with guilt or merit, reward or punishment. This is absolute sovereignty for YHVH to choose to bestow loving kindness upon the entire of creation. Okay, and Ramchal, so this is an incredibly important development that humanity's got to reach. This is what will happen at final redemption. The whole system of reward and punishment will be collapsed to a certain degree, and there will be a massive outpouring of loving kindness for all humanity. That judgment will come to an end. He will no longer guide the world through the attribute of judgment. So it won't be a case of reward and punishment. Right at final redemption, he will act through his attribute of loving kindness, which totally and utterly transcends the letter of the law. It's his absolute sovereignty to act in such a way, whereas normally he acts in a way that is somehow connected to the deeds of man. So the deeds of man affect the way YHVH acts upon creation. The final redemption, it will be his absolute authority to act in the capacity that he chooses to act, and the capacity at the final redemption is that he will act through the attribute of loving kindness, whether we deserve it or not, whether we've sinned or not, whether we've got guilt or we've got merit. It will not direct how YHVH acts. His absolute authority will direct how he acts, and that is how he has willed to act in the end. So I hope you can understand how important this to reach this level is, and to cling to this reality, because it's going to inform the way that we think now, because we're still caught in that whole cycle of understanding the name YHVH through his attribute of judgment and through his attribute of mercy. You know, we're not always, or we've forgotten to connect to the name YHVH in his absolute sovereignty, and in his absolute sovereignty he acts through the attribute of loving kindness. So we need to connect to this reality, and we need to know YHVH through this attribute. And this is the verse that Ramchal has pointed out to us. For my own sake, I will act. We're going to analyse that now. I just wanted to brief you on that, so you were, hopefully you can make that mental transition, and you can understand some of the teachings that I teach are based on this attribute of loving kindness and absolute oneness, absolute sovereignty. And I do make mention of this concept many, many times, but this is just to clarify it and look at this verse. It's going to hopefully help illuminate a better understanding of this whole concept of YHVH and his absolute authority and his absolute sovereignty to act in the capacity of showing humanity loving kindness despite our deeds, because all those deeds was part of his plan to perfect humanity. He has had purpose in everything. In his absolute sovereignty, as well as him going to transition and direct and guide the whole of creation through loving kindness, it was his plan and his will to create a system of judgment and the necessary levels of mercy, and allow man to affect the way that YHVH guided and operated within the created world. It was his part of his perfect plan to bring us to that place of rectification, to bring us to that place of final redemption, to give us a work to do and a framework with which we can earn reward, if you like. So it was his will that happened, and at the end it will be his will that entire system is collapsed, and he will run this world on his terms as he wills, independent of anything man has done in terms of thought, word and deed. Okay? Let's go and have a look at this amazing verse. Right, so for my sake, I will do. For how shall it be profaned? And my honour I will not give to another. Okay, it's got a regular gematria of 1654. I'm going to really quickly go over something that happened. Okay, so I read this on Shabbat, which we're now on Monday, so I read this particular teaching on Shabbat. On Motzi Shabbat, the end of Shabbat, I can't write on Shabbat, so everything's got to be done by memory. So as soon as Shabbat is out, which was very late, I think it was the latest Shabbat in the year, so 11:32, where I am, which is quite northerly up in Scotland, northerly, it's it's 11:32 at night, Shabbat went out, and I thought to myself, no, come on, after I'd done a brief tidy up downstairs and put the kitchen in order and things like that, I thought, no, let's get this put down because it's so important. It really, really stood out to me. So I got the number 1654, and I thought, I've never had that. I knew that I'd never had that number before because I searched all my past PowerPoints, and I've got over 1,000, maybe over 2,000 slides with all different numbers in from different analyses. I've done, and I obviously run a check when I get a number, see where it's come up before, see if I can build a bit of a picture up to what that number might mean. Are there any links to other verses or other words that could flesh out an understanding and give us more knowledge of the name YHVH. So I run a quick search on this particular number 1654. It came up with nothing. So I think, okay, right. So I looked for multiples, etc., etc. And I can't remember offhand what the results are. When I come back, it'll probably all come to my mind. But I know that number, particularly that number 1654, did not come up in any of the teachings. Okay, so fine. Then I was looking at another part of the verse further on. You'll see when we get to it. I might just flick it up actually. Got to another part of the verse to analyse, which itself was an inspiration to put these numbers together. I'd split it into 3 sections. I'd split it into for my sake I will do, for how shall it be, no, for my sake I will do. And then the next one I'd split it up into for how shall it be profaned. And then the next part was, and my honour I will not give to another. Something in my mind said, okay, so put the first 2 together. For my sake I will do, for how shall it be profaned. And I came up with the number 885, which is a very common number that's I've come up quite a lot. This was one number that had come up previously, unlike the 1654. What number is that then? That's Attribute Yosef, the bones of Yosef. So I hope you can understand this is a very significant number. So I thought to myself, okay, let's just pull out all the things for that number, because obviously this is very significant now. And so I'd already had this inspiration to put those 2 numbers together, and there's lots of key numbers around that. So then what happened was, as I'm looking for that, obviously I come across the fact that 885 is 5 times 177, and 177 is Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. So I did actually know this. So I'm running through my previous 2,000 pages of numbers and things like that, trying to build up a picture and trying to weave everything together and pull off some nice numbers and some good understandings. And anyway, as I'm going through the numbers, this 885, obviously come across Gan Eden, because 885, like I've just said, is 177 times 5. So if we go down to point 10 now, as I'm looking at that number and seeing the word Gan Eden, an inspiration came into my mind, and it said, look at that, there's 2 Sophite letter nuns in Gan Eden, and you've never done the numbers for Gan Eden with the Sophite nuns. Sophite nun means there's 5 letters which, if they're at the end of the word, change form. The letter Chaf changes form at the end, the letter Mem, the letter Nun, the letter Pe, the letter Sade. So when they change name, when they change form, they also change number. So the Nun changes from a 50 to a 700. Now you can use both systems. Both systems are valid gematria site systems. So you can use the 50 for the Nun, but you can also create some new numbers called Mispar Gadol, big numbers, from doing the Sophite values. And in this case, I felt inspired to add them up. And when I added them up, I came to 1,477. It's all written down now in point 10 for you, so you're going to see where I'm going with this. So the 1,477, and I ran a check of that number, nothing. I'd never come across that number before. Okay, so then another inspiration said, add it together with the regular, because this is a very common practice. You can add the Mispagdol to the regular. So I thought, okay, so I'll add the 177, which is Gan Eden, order regularly. And then, lo and behold, as soon as I added that number, I got the 1,654. And I was thinking to myself, when I was looking at the number, I'm thinking, that's just familiar. I run a check on that. And then it brought me straight back to this particular number. Okay, so just to bear in mind that these inspirations, that these little promptings that we get, pay attention to them. You know, I've learnt to tune in to this inspiration because I've seen so many times where it's gone. Now, there must be an absolute perfect order. When we're dealing with divine providence, there's a perfect order to it. I've come across this so many times, but never in such a significant way. Never in such a significant way. That's why I'm telling you about it. There's loads of times where I've thought, if I hadn't previously analysed that verse, I would have been lacking in understanding, and I might have only just analysed a verse the day before and needed some key concept that I've been able to glean from a previous analysis in order to flesh out a particular analysis that I'm doing. And sometimes I've analysed a lot of various texts, and I've never done teachings on them, but I've maybe used parts of those analyses, like I said, to flesh out analysis that I have done teachings on. So this was a case of, it's just an illustration of how powerful divine providence is. Okay, because obviously now there's a very key link between the Garden of Eden, where we're wanting to go, and this whole concept of a revelation of YHVH's absolute authority and absolute sovereignty, where he chooses to reveal himself through his attribute of loving kindness, which supersedes anything, any deed of man, any word, thought and deed of man. It's he will reveal himself because he wills to reveal himself in that capacity, not as a harsh judge, not as condemnation, not even as mercy, just pure outpouring of loving kindness. And this is where we want to be. This is the whole concept of Gan Eden. This is us returning and being restored to that face-to-face revelation, that utter and absolute flow of blessing into our lives, you know, that is totally and utterly nothing to do with whether we earn it or whether we've deserved it to we have been put through a test, a big harsh test, the whole of humanity. But this level, what we finally reach, is nothing to do whether we earn it or not. It's to do with the fact that YHVH desires to bestow his goodness upon us, and he found a way for us to be able to have that goodness bestowed upon us. And part of that goodness has been for us to be in a situation for the last 6,000 years where we have had to toil and overcome a lot of negativity and a lot of adversity and a lot of darkness, and transform that darkness into light and transform the chaos into shalom and things like that. So we've been through a system, but ultimately at the end of the system, at the end of those 6,000 years, by the absolute sovereignty of YHVH, he will reveal himself. Okay? So, and it's all related to the concept of Gan Eden. That's what I'm trying to really drive home. So, as you can see, there's a massive link here. And that's a very important link that we've got to make. Gan Eden is also the level of the world to come. It's the level of the first letter here of the name YHVH. This is the place that we're wanting to return back to. Adam fell from Gan Eden. We are wanting to go back to Gan Eden, but we will be higher than where we were originally because of the whole process of tikkun and rectification that the entire of creation has been put through. So that's linking this overall total to point 10. And I just wanted to point you that out because obviously divine providence is telling me that's a very important link that we have to make. And if we want to get back to Gan Eden, we're going to have to think about this a lot. We're going to have to meditate on this a lot, and we're going to have to aim for this. You know, we're going to have to become more and more conscious of this, because the more conscious that we are of it, the more that we can make that transition, that we can transition from this restricted mentality where we are judging humanity based on merit and based on what they deserve. And I hear a lot from a lot of people, quite a lot of harsh judgment all the time. And people are very, very, very quick to judge. And I think if they were aware of what's coming at the end, they might just be a little bit more reserved about making judgments against other people in humanity. We need to be aware of what's coming, basically. We need to be prepared for what is to come. And it's very good to get our minds in that place already. Okay, so let's go do this analysis because it's incredible. So point 1 then, for my sake, I will do 776 regularly, 173 ordinarily, comes to 949. Point 2 is Shah Hagil Galim, the Gate of Reincarnations. This is a famous book by Arizal, okay, top Kabbalist. Shah Hagil Galim can also mean like cycles. Okay, so according to Rabbi Ashlag, Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag, he said that a reincarnation is not like how we understand reincarnations, like you come back to life in a different body. This is a concept, this can happen, and we know there's evidence of it even in the New Testament, because we can see clear evidence that when Yeshua reappeared to his disciples, he reappeared in a different body because they didn't recognize him, and it's documented very clearly that they did not recognize him. And why would they not recognize him if he came in the same body? And the fact that reincarnations, the same soul can come back in another body, to me, his body had died, he'd been crucified and things like that. So there were times where it suggests it was a completely different body, because they definitely did not recognize him. And it was only till he started speaking that they recognized him. And there was even sitting with him. So it's not just a case of, him coming back in the same body. It suggests the New Testament that he did actually come back and was reincarnated, his soul, into a different body, even if that was temporary. This can happen on a temporary basis. And Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag said that we've got to understand reincarnation. Certain incarnations can happen within the day. I can't go too much into that because that's something that I don't know a lot about. But maybe for just one particular day, we've got a particular correction that needs to happen, and we get some kind of assistance from a soul that needs to complete that particular correction. Okay, so we get an assistance. And it can be very much connected to what I've just been talking about, divine inspiration. We can be getting assistance from higher souls, and so in a way they've reincarnated through us. They're communicating to us. Eliyahu's a classic one, that was a reincarnation of Eliyahu. Yeshua was Moshe reincarnated, what's called a full Gilgalim. He was a complete and total reincarnation. There's different concepts. There's a Gilgalim, which is when your soul completely comes back within the body of another, and then there's what's called an impregnation, an Ibo, where you are almost impregnating that soul in a way, just like a man's seed would impregnate a woman. So it's not a full incarnation of the soul, it's just an influence from a particular other soul. Okay, so this is all connected, because we will have to complete all what we've got to complete in the 6,000 years. So Sha'ar Gilgalim comes to 109 ordinarily, and plus it comes to 667 regularly, and that comes to 776. Okay, so exactly the same as this. And it is actually worth pointing out that regarding this Gilgulim, there's all kinds of concepts. Like I said, the highly Kabbalistic and the highly coded, so it's very difficult when you haven't decoded everything. But basically, we're all here to correct Adam. So you can understand part of Adam's problem is within all of humanity. So if you like, we're all part of rectifying a problem that Adam had caused. So the entire of humanity, if you like, is part of a reincarnation of Adam. And it's like we've all got a spark of Moshe within us. We've all got a spark of the Moshiach within us. And we are all doing something to complete the work of Moshiach. Okay, within our lives. We have got some of the soul of Moshiach literally within us. It's ultimately all the name YHVH. It's all the Moshiach and is very much connected to different aspects of the name YHVH. So it's ultimately all YHVH. But we have got some kind of incarnation of that within us. It's called our soul. Okay, and it descends into a body, and that's the whole the whole concept of exile as well. A soul is from a very lofty abode, and it descends into a very physical and oftentimes a very exiled state within this world and within the life into which they are born. Okay, so they come into a different incarnation, and everything is in a perfect order. Absolutely everything is in a perfect order. And as we can see, this whole process of being allowed to come and descend in as a soul into a body, what is ultimately an exile, and we can be exiled into some very dark situations, ultimately that is connected also to the whole concept of loving kindness. Why? Because we can see here, for my sake I will do. So it was YHVH's will that he caused this whole system of incarnation of a soul within a body. He wills for his name, YHVH, to be revealed on earth as it is in heaven. And that's exactly the same concept. For the name YHVH, the entire physical creation is his body. And he desires to descend into it. And ultimately for his loving kindness to be revealed through it, not his harsh judgment and not even his mercy, but his pure loving kindness to be revealed. His soul is named the YHVH to dominate the entire of physical reality, which is his body, through his attribute of loving kindness. At this time, YHVH has limited himself. He's limited that revelation, just as we're in exile and we're in quite oppressive situations where the light of our own soul sometimes struggles to shine in our lives with every thought, word and deed that we do. YHVH has also restricted himself in some way, but in the end he will act completely sovereign. He will act in complete sovereignty, and his will to bestow loving kindness will happen no matter what. It will not be dependent on anything other than he will to reveal his soul within his body. And he's got an absolute capacity to do that, and an absolute sovereignty and authority to do that. And he wants to show us his absolute sovereignty. That's his will, to reveal his absolute power. And that's the way that he chooses to do it. Okay, so I hope you can understand there's lots of different connections there. That whole 109, for example, 109 from point 2, this is also a very important number because it's the mother of all living. This is the term, this is the first letter here. The mother of all living comes to 109. Imhol Chai. Okay, so this is an appellation given to Eve. Okay, she's called Chaya. That's in a rectified state. So we're wanting to rectify the divine feminine. We're wanting to rectify Chaya who ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and passed it on to Adam. You know, so we're in this process of rectification, and we're all in an incarnation, and this is all connected to this concept, Shah Hagilgalim, and we are also rectifying Chaya, all of humanity together. All of humanity together are in some way a complete a complete incarnation, together united, we're a complete incarnation of Chaya, and all of us together are a complete incarnation of Adam, and all of us together will be part of the rectification of Chaya and Adam. Okay? And I just wanted to point out as well, the word Achad, the rabbis say, is an abbreviation for the three names Adam, Chaya, and David. Okay, so when Adam and Chaya are linked to David, Moshiach ben David, we have got this Achad, oneness. And what is the ultimate oneness? To reveal the absolute sovereignty of the name YHVH. How will that be done? When he chooses to bestow loving kindness on humanity, because he wants to do that. And there's no force in this world that can prevent him from doing that. There is no evil. There is no independent force. Evil cannot, no matter what evil humanity has descended to do, it will not stop or ever prevent YHVH from acting in his absolute authority to bestow loving kindness. He cannot be defeated. When he wills to bestow that loving kindness, there is no evil in this world that can prevent him. And then you will see evil has absolutely no power whatsoever. Whatsoever. Right now, we live in a world where it looks like evil has a lot of power, and that the name YHVH doesn't have a lot of power. That's what it appears to be like to us. And then we will see very clearly this is not the case. This evil has absolutely no power, and the name YHVH is the ultimate and absolute authority, and that's the way his oneness, which means his absolute sovereignty and power, will be revealed through his attribute of loving kindness. I hope you can see where I'm going and why I keep emphasizing this, because it's so important. It's just so important. So we've got that Sha'ar Gilgalim. What else is that connected to? Point 3. I've just said about David. So we've got Adam, Chaya, which are very much connected to this Shah Hagilgalim. And then we've got straight away, and I said about David. So we've got straight away, and he sent and brought him. That's from 1 Samuel 16:12. Who was it that was sent and brought? It was David. He checked out Yishai's sons, Jesse's sons, Shemuel's prophet Samuel, and then he asked if there was another one, and then it says, and he sent and brought him, and then this is part of the verse where it talks about him being ruddy, with beautiful eyes and handsome of appearance. So this is a verse that comes up all the time, and it's come up here, and he sent and brought him, and that is exactly where we want to be. And look what it's connected to. It's connected to this whole concept, what we keep talking about, this whole concept of Gan Eden, this whole concept of the revelation of the attribute of loving kindness. Because 388 times it by 2 is 776. Okay, so that's where we get that connection. And also we've got and he sent and brought him, and we've got 91 ordinally. Together they come to 479. These are both extremely significant numbers. Okay, so 91 is YHVH Adonai, united together. So this is a very powerful unity, because YHVH symbolises heaven and Adonai symbolises earth. Okay, Adonai is the name associated with Malkuth, the kingdom. And we wanting the kingdom of heaven, which is the name YHVH, to be established on earth, which is represented by the name Adonai. Okay, so we need a unity of those two names, YHVH Adonai. And that comes to 91, exactly the same gematria as and he sent and brought him. Because David, Melech David, Moshiach ben David unites heaven and earth together. Because through through Moshiach, through Moshiach ben David, that unity is fully revealed. His kingdom is fully established. The kingdom of YHVH is very much linked to a revelation of Moshiach ben David. And we can see how Moshiach ben David is related to all these that we've just been talking about. You know, David means beloved, by the way. It means the name actually means beloved. We're talking about revealing Yod-Heh's, Vav-Heh's love for humanity. We're talking about being in a place of being beloved. Okay, so it's all very interesting stuff. Okay, point 4 then. Be'orcha nire or. So in your light we see light. That's from Psalm 36:10. That comes to 672. 672 is 4 times 173. 173 is a completely, totally, absolutely important number. I'll go through why. That as 107 ordinally, again it's a very significant number. 672 plus 107 comes to 779. Just to point out that 107, if we multiply that by 7, comes to Yeshua HaMashiach. So we've come across this whole concept of in your light we see light. There'll be teaching of it like that. It will be called in your light we see light. What is the light through which we see the light of YHVH? It's the light of Moshiach ben Yosef, the suffering servant with us in exile during this 6,000 years, when we are subject to a diminished revelation of the name YHVH, a hiddenness of the name YHVH. So we are we experience lack and suffering, and we are trying to battle against forces of darkness and battle against forces of doubt and transform chaos into shalom and things like that. That whole concept is very much bound with the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. And in that light, when we thoroughly understand what YHVH has been trying to accomplish, i.e. to get us to that place where he can reveal to us his absolute sovereignty, simply because he wills it, there's a time frame involved, this 6,000 years. Once that time is up, YHVH will take control. And we're very nearly there. So we've got a lot to look forward to. And I go over this concept, in your light we see light, quite a lot. So I'm not going to go over it again at this point. But that definitely, when you analyse Psalm 36:10, it's definitely linked to a revelation of Moshiach ben Yosef, because the two words that Yosef uttered whilst he was in prison to the cupbearer, remember me and take me out, that cost him 2 extra years in prison, that parallel to the 2,000 years of the suffering of Yeshua in exile with us since he died. That comes to 1,000. I'm speaking from memory now. So those two words together come to 1,266. Okay. Those two words that were uttered that has cost these 2,000 years of exile, in Edomite exile, trying to rectify the entire of creation from us in our capacity below, the 999 footsteps of Moshiach ben Yosef. So those two words come to 1,266. This Psalm 36, verse 10, the entire psalm comes to 1,266. They are absolute. I'll probably put a screen up. You might have to pause it and read it, but there is an absolute connection. The light in which we see the light of the name YHVH is the light of Moshiach ben Yosef, and that's why it's so critical to reveal that light. Okay, and as you can see, again, this is very much connected to this verse. Why? Because we've got to accomplish this. We have got to accomplish the 999 footsteps of Moshiach ben Yosef below. We're in a process of accomplishing that now. But all these things that are there are really to ultimately lead us to that place of final revelation, where the loving kindness of YHVH is revealed. And all the light of Moshiach ben Yosef should just reveal that. Because when we are able to assess exactly what YHVH is doing, and the ultimate goal that where we're going to, and we can assess the entire of these 6,000 years of creation based on what's written in the Torah, and we can know with absolute assurance that there's only YHVH and nothing else. This is the light through which we will be able to perceive the light of, we will be able to perceive the absolute authority of YHVH, and we will know that it's always been just about loving kindness. It's always the fundamental underlying reality of entire of creation, whether it's appeared this way or not, is being the underlying driving force in all creation, despite appearances, has been the loving kindness of YHVH. He acts always through that attribute of loving kindness, except it's hidden. Just as the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef is hidden, however, he's still acting through the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, whether we were aware of it or not. It's the most hidden secret concept in the entire Torah. And that is also very much linked to the fact that YHVH is loving kindness, is the ultimate driving force, just as Moshiach ben Yosef is the power with us in exile, helping us, strengthening us, and reaching us, and gathering in the lost. Just that whole system and whole power called Moshiach ben Yosef, the whole way that YHVH has desired to work within these, specifically these last 2,000 years, to bring us to that place of rectification. Yeah, it's not been an easy journey. The whole Messianic period, all the last 2,000 years have been very harsh. But beneath all that, the driving force beneath all that, is the loving kindness of the name YHVH, but it's been hidden in exile. Okay, but when we attach ourselves, and when the light of Moshiach ben Yosef is revealed to us, so too will the loving kindness be revealed. We have got to transition Moshiach, the light. We have got to reveal the light of Moshiach ben Yosef. And when we do that, we will reveal the loving kindness of the name YHVH. The two are absolutely one. The two are one. We can see that from here. We have got to do everything that we can in an unapologetic way. Because when we reveal the light of Moshiach ben Yosef and make all the connections that are necessary in order to reveal that light in truth, not fantasy fiction version of Moshiach ben Yosef, I'm talking about the light, the truth of Moshiach ben Yosef. When that's revealed, we will see all these things that we are talking about now. The entire completion of rectification, the entire completion of the rectification process, the whole elevation up to the level of Gan Eden, even higher than where we felt from the place from which we fell, the entire absolute sovereignty of YHVH revealed, which is desired to bestow upon us and guide us through loving kindness. All these wonderful things are all revealed at this point, and that Sha'ar Gilgalim, we will reach our final incarnation. The last Adam. Okay, so it's all connected on all these things. And what is point 4? What is another connection there? Yeshua Mashiach. So we've got to keep persisting with this as much as possible. Point 5 then, Kol, voice. So we've got the book Kol Hator, voice. Voice is very much associated with Yaakov as well. The voice is the voice of Yaakov. The hands are the hands of Esav. So there is this very much a connection to the voice. This is very much connected to the concept of our own souls. Because Yaakov is synonymous with our soul, it's synonymous with our good inclination, So we can speak a lot of things into being as well. We've got to understand the power of our own tongue. That comes to 136, and it's an ordinal of 37. 136 is Kiseh David, the throne of David, which is Moshiach ben Yosef. So 136, it comes to the regular of Kiseh David is 95, which is Hamelech, the king. The ordinal of it is 41. Add them together, comes to 136. There's lots of things that are 136. I've just pulled out this one voice. There's a filling of Sarach that's 136. There's a filling of Yaakov that's also 136, and there are other things beside. But I've just pointed that out. Because obviously we've got a good indication that this whole concept of voice is very important when it comes to final revelation, final redemption. Why? Because the book is called Kol Hator, the voice of the turtle dove. Okay, and that's all connected with the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, what we're desiring to be revealed. And we've got to pray about these things. Ultimately, our voice is our prayer. And, you know, the whole concept of the fallen booth of David, Rabbi Nachman says that is to do with the fact that prayer is in a very diminished state. Prayer is synonymous with the feminine divine as well. You've got Torah, which is linked to the masculine side of divinity. And you've got prayer, which is related to the feminine side of divinity. We are wanting to restore the feminine divine. You know, the whole concept of Moshiach is in the process of restoring the feminine divine. So you've got to understand the fallen booth of David is very much associated with prayer. Prayer is something that is in a very diminished state, and it needs to be elevated up, and it needs to be one with Torah. You know, it's quite a complex concept that Rabbi Nachman put forward, but basically our prayers just should be for Torah to be fulfilled. What Torah do we want fulfilling? This is the Torah that we want fulfilling. What we've got, what the things that we're talking about now, the only thing that we ultimately want to see revealed is YHVH and his absolute authority to act in the capacity of through his attribute of loving kindness. Okay, we need to give voice to that. We need to give voice to the fact that we need Moshiach ben Yosef to be revealed. We need to do something about it, but we need to pray about it. And this is when King David also said, I am prayer. You know, Ani tefillah, I am prayer. So we know that very much connected to the concept of Moshiach ben David is the concept of prayer. And it's got to be united with Torah. The ultimate prayer is when we pray words of Torah. So what have we got before us now? This is Torah. These are things that we want to see accomplished. And what do we do to bring that forth? We pray. And this is linked to the whole concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. There'll come a time where we don't need to pray. Everything will be thoroughly revealed. But we're in a time now, whilst Moshiach ben Yosef is hidden, the light of the name YHVH is hidden. And we're living in a world which appears to operate purely through the attribute of judgment, and sometimes, if we're fortunate, through the attribute of mercy. And we are wanting to reach this place where the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef is revealed, the light of the name YHVH is revealed, his absolute authority is revealed, and his loving kindness is revealed. And that's all connected to, one, the throne of David, which is Moshiach ben Yosef, and crying out for this to be accomplished with our voice, which is synonymous with Yaakov, our inner Yaakov, our good inclination, our soul dominating over our bodies. And we've got to pray for things that satisfy our soul as well, not our bodies. Most people turn up to prayer sessions and it's just a shopping list to satisfy your physical needs. But obviously, Kol is associated with Yaakov, which is your soul. So you've got to pray for your soul's needs, which is ultimately connected to Torah, not a shopping list. And then the ordinal for that is 37, and 37 is the ordinal for Yeshu, which is Moshiach ben Yosef again. Moshiach ben Yosef is the throne of David, as it says in Kol Hator, Vilna Gaon's book. Kol Hator states that Moshiach ben Yosef is the throne of David. So when we've accomplished what we've got to accomplish, in this 6,000 years to rectify everything that we've got to rectify and to raise up the fallen booth of David, to pray properly for what we should be praying for, not just a shopping list. And all these concepts that I've been talking about, we've got to pray for the right things. We've got to give voice to the right things. We've got to want the right things. We've got to overcome our desire for just physical satisfaction and be really directed towards what's good for our souls, truly good for our souls, which is a revelation of the attribute of loving kindness. We've just got to basically want to draw near to the name YHVH. That's the ultimate prayer. It's nearness to the name YHVH. There's nothing else that your soul desires. Your body's going to get in the way of that, because it wants cars and houses and material satisfaction and comfort and security and this, that and the other, and it just wants, like I say, it's a shopping list mentality. We've got to get into a soul, we've got to rouse up our soul's desires within ourselves. We've got to give voice to that. And like I said, that's very much connected to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. Sometimes that voice within us is hidden in exile. It's hidden in the exile of Esav. What does Esav represent? Materiality. So we give voice to our material needs. We don't give voice to our soul needs. Our soul needs are desiring nearness to the name YHVH. What would that look like? Nearness to his loving kindness. We will settle for a God of harsh judgment that sometimes appears merciful as long as we get that car that we wanted. We've got to get out of that mentality. That's exile. Because we don't want a relationship with God based on those terms. We want his loving kindness to be revealed. That's what our soul desires. So we've got to get to that place, and that's associated with prayer. It's returning to that place. And that's why we've got the number 173, which we're going to look at now. So let's just be very clear about this 173. Everything that's on there that's in blue is all connected. It's all multiples. So you've got for my sake, I will do. That I will do, by the way, it comes to Esav. So Esav is all about doing, but this is all about God's doing. It transcends materiality. Okay. But the word the word there for I will do is got the exact gematria of Esav, and Esav is very much connected to that. We can see this, like you get or say shalom. It's very much who makes peace. So Esav is very much to do with making. Okay, just to point that out. So all the numbers in blue, the 173, the 672 from point 4, and then all the other 173s that we're seeing now. Let's go and have a look at point 6, because with point 6, it shows us, connects us to a major concept. These 3 words are 3 words to gather in. Obviously, Moshiach ben Yosef is in exile with us, gathering in the holy lost sparks. When all the sparks are gathered in, we will hit final redemption, and not one holy spark will be left behind. That means not one soul, by the way. Everybody's got a soul, and it will need to be gathered in. So these are the 3 verbs from Isaiah 56:8 that talk about the gathering in. I think I'm just going to read that verse because it's so important. Right, so it's absolutely beautiful. It says, "So says the Lord God, who gathers in the dispersed of Israel. I will yet gather others to him, together with his gathered ones." Okay, so that's Isaiah 56:8. It comes to 426, which is 6 times 71, 6 times Yonah. So we've always got that link. Every single thing to do with the revelation of Moshiach, especially Moshiach ben Yosef, is connected to the concept of Yonah, the dove, and also the Kol HaTor is voice of the turtle dove. So we've got a connection there as well. Right, let's go back. So I'm glad I actually read that out now. So those 3 verbs are the 3 verbs together that we've just read. I will gather and gather others besides, all that. So it's absolutely wonderful. Those three verbs together come to 713, which is teshuva. So we're in a process of teshuva, which means repentance. We are trying to return to our former pristine state in Gan Eden before the fall of man. So there's a process of teshuva involved. It's all orchestrated with absolute utter perfection. We're in that process of teshuva to go and gather in all the holy lost sparks. That's what it means. Teshuva is to return all the fallen parts of holy, all that is holy that's fallen into exile, to return it back to its original place. And Moshiach ben Yosef is helping us to accomplish that. It's the power within us, but it's also the power that reaches us when we are trapped in difficult situations. So Hashem has no plan, YHVH has no plan to leave any spark of holiness behind. It will all be gathered in. So that's why those words together are connected to the concept of teshuva. Very important. And those three words, which we know are connected to teshuva, teshuv he, return of the letter he. So the fallen letter he from the name YHVH, which is synonymous with the Shekinah, the divine feminine, prayer, what we've just said, Melech David, the whole kingdom, Malkuth, and there's all kinds of different words, Aretz, the land, Knesset Yisrael. It's all different ways of saying the same thing, basically, different aspects of the same thing. Right, we've got to return that to the first letter here, and that's what teshuva means. The rabbi says it means teshuv here, return of the letter here, back to a former status. The letter here is the feminine aspect of divinity. Okay, so, and that doesn't mean feminine as in a woman. It's basically elevating our soul back up. Basically that's ultimately what it means. So you're elevating up the fallen state of the letter A to a former glory, and that's teshuv here. And that's when is that accomplished? When everything holy is gathered in from this exile. And there's a set time for that. That's 6,000 years. That's a set time for that to be accomplished. That comes to 173 ordinally, which links us back to everything that we've got on there. That's 173. So the voice, giving prayer to all these things that we become aware of, making our prayer, linking it to Torah, major concepts of Torah rather than our physical desires. In your light we see light, connecting this whole experience of life to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, and then understanding that ultimately it's all about the absolute authority of the name YHVH and his will to reveal himself to mankind through his attribute of loving kindness, to supersede all judgment, to supersede even the concept of mercy. It will be pure loving kindness and nothing else. That's his absolute sovereignty to act in that capacity, regardless of man's thoughts, words or deeds that could be good or evil. Okay. Just to point out, 173 is the 41st prime. We've already talked about the concept of the throne of David. 41 is the ordinal for the throne of David. Kiseh David, the ordinal of that is 41. So the regular is 95, which is Hamelech. I've already pointed this out. The ordinal 41. Together they come to 136. Okay, point 7 then. So what's the unholy opposite? I mean, there's ultimately nothing that in this world that's unholy. It's an appearance of unholy. Okay, what's standing in our way? What's blocking this revelation of YHVH to act in the capacity that he, through his absolute sovereignty, desires to act? Esav is what? I wouldn't say it's blocking the way. Esav needs transforming. This is a whole process of transforming Esav from Esav into Shalom. Esav and Shalom have got exactly the same gematria, 376. We know that it's significant. This transformation is significant because, like I've pointed out, that word in point 1, I will do. So it's, let me see if I can actually read it in Hebrew. Asa, I will do, comes to 376, okay, which is Esav. The regular spelling of Esav is 376, but it's also Shalom, and we come across this a lot as well. Okay, the regular of Esav filled out here comes to 766. The ordinal comes to 183. I'm not going to go through those numbers today, but obviously together they come to 949. So we can see there's a massive link. This is Esav filled to the second filling, which is the absolute, according to Arizal, is the absolute essence. So the absolute essence of Esav is to be that number 949. And what number is that the exact same as for my sake I will do? Okay, so what is that telling us? That is telling us the whole purpose of this experience of descent into our body, which is synonymous with Esav, is for an ultimate glory of the name YHVH to be revealed, because he desires to dwell in physical reality that is synonymous with Esav, our body. This entire creation is YHVH's body. And just as our soul desires to dwell within our body in complete harmony and shalom, so YHVH does. And this will happen. His name will be revealed through his attribute of loving kindness and his absolute authority through physical creation, which is synonymous with Esav, and also synonymous with the nations. You know, so yes, Hashem is gathering in the lost of Israel, but he's also gathering others beside, and those people are others from the nations. You know, and we will be gathered as one. And he's accomplishing this very much through Moshiach ben Yosef, who is with us suffering in exile, and he's also reaching the lost. He's reaching the lost of the house of Israel, and he's reaching the righteous of the nations and gathering people in. Okay, and those are of the house of those are of the nations are synonymous with Esav, who represents the nations. So YHVH desires to be king over Israel and also king over the nations. Right, let's have another look. There's probably loads of stuff I could talk about Esav. I mean, this is the whole concept of the vessels of Shalom. YHVH has got the light has got to go into a vessel. It's the whole concept of lights and vessels. What is the ultimate vessel that YHVH is able to fill his light put his light into? It's the only vessel that can contain light and blessing is a vessel of shalom. Where do we get the shalom from in this world? We have to transform it from Esav. We have to transform our bodies from the chaotic state that they are in exile into shalom. We've got to create harmony and shalom between body and soul. We've got to create harmony and shalom between Israel and the nations. This will be done by Moshiach. Moshiach ben David will guide us. He's the one shepherd over all. Okay, so this has got to happen. It's an absolute critical part of our evolution, if you like, and part of the rectification process is to create a vessel of shalom. With that vessel of shalom, we will be able to contain this revelation of the name YHVH and his absolute authority, his absolute sovereignty, which is loving kindness, his will to act through the attribute of loving kindness. Okay? Which shall be wonderful. We'll be glad when that day comes. And point 8 is just this saying, on the day that YHVH Elohim created heaven and earth, isn't it? The earth and heaven. It's in that order. I've put it wrong down there, but on that day that YHVH Elohim created her earth and heaven. Check out the order. The land comes before heaven. In some instances, it's the heavens and the earth, and in this instance, it's earth and the heavens. So it's this is where we're heading, aren't we? We're heading where we have rectified the earth to such a degree that it precedes even a revelation of the heavens. The heavens will be revealed from within the earth. You know? Okay, so this is very important. That's got a regular gematria of 1,633 plus 265 ordinally comes to 1,898, which is 3 times 900. No, it's not. I think it's 2. Yeah, it's 2 times... just change that now, you won't know any different. It's 2 times 949. Okay, 1,633 is 23, which is Chaya. We're talking about rectification of Chaya, the mother of all living. Okay, which is linked to that number 109 from point 2, the ordinal from Sha'ar Hagilgulim that we talked about. So 23 is the name Eve in a rectified state. Normally, Eve is called Chava in exile. It's got a gematria of 19, but rectified, it's got a gematria of 23. So that's Chaya rectified, and it's times 71. And we know that 71 is Yonah, the whole concept of the dove of redemption, the bird of Moshiach, which Moshe is the body of the bird, the right wing is Moshiach ben David, and the left wing is Moshiach ben Yosef, and that's synonymous with serving YHVH with love and joy. The right wing is love, the left wing is joy. And that's when we take flight. Hey, we've got to have joy and we've got to have love, basically. Right, let's have a look at this one, because this is another very intriguing passage. This is from I did a whole series of analysis, and it was based on the word disguised. So the prophet was disguised, the king was disguised, and King Saul was disguised. They all disguised themselves in some way. Obviously, King Saul disguised himself for the witch. The prophet disguised himself. And this is taken from the verse where the prophet disguised himself. Okay, so what does it come to? It comes to 713, which is the number that we've just been talking about, Teshuvah. Okay, Teshuvah comes to 713. I'm going to change the colour of that to bright green, so that stands out. And I'll change the other one to bright green so that you can see the connection. Right, so they're both bright green now. So, and the prophet went and waited for the king on the way, comes to 713. So we've got a connection to this whole concept of Teshuvah. It's got an ordinal of 236, which is 118 times 2. And 118 is a filling out of Yeshua. I may put that down if I remember, because it's not on there at the moment. But I'll probably put that 236 is 2 times 118. 118 is a very, very significant filling out of the name Yeshua. Together they come to 949. So we can see a big connection there. Right, we've already gone over the concept of Gan Eden, so went through these numbers. So we've got the entire of this verse connected to the concept of Gan Eden. That's where we're going to be ultimately heading, isn't it? The Garden of Eden. We want to go from a fallen state to an exalted state, and that represents our exalted state, our pristine state, our state after we've gone through a rectification process, and that's very much connected to this whole verse, obviously. Right, point 11 then, 1,654, which is the verse total plus, and it's the same as Gan Eden as well, plus the ordinal of Gan Eden. When we've got the ordinal of Gan Eden, we mean the ordinal of Gan Eden spelt regularly, and then the ordinal of Gan Eden, the Mispar Gadol, add them together, come to 124. So 1,654 plus 124 comes to 1,778. Okay, I've got C over, so we will go C over. Possibly not this lesson, but we will see over in the next lesson. It's got a squared ordinal of 1,250, and I've also put C over. Mispar Gadol ordinals C over. So the squared ordinal of Gan Eden comes to 1,250. That's where that number comes from. The regular squared ordinals, so without doing the Mispar Gadol comes to 673. And 673 is 123rd prime. And 123 is the number that comes up all the time. It's Kate's Shem Lechoshek, he sets an end to darkness. So we know Gan Eden obviously is that revelation of the end of darkness. The ultimate revelation of the end of darkness. We can see how that's connected to the squared ordinals of Gan Eden, Garden of Eden. Okay, point 12 then, 177, which is the regular of Garden of Eden, plus the ordinal of the Garden of Eden. Add them together comes 228, which is 4 times 57, 4 times Hamoshiach. Right, so Hamoshiach is the Moshiach. So we know there's a connection between Garden of Eden and a revelation of Moshiach. There's other times where that 128 comes up that's significant, but obviously we can't afford to go through absolutely everything. What else do we point out then? The final verse. So this is the ultimate significance, isn't it? This is where Joseph meets with his father again. And we can see from here that this verse, which Ramchal pointed out was to do with the revelation of his loving kindness, YHVH loving kindness, comes to 1,654. If we times that by 3, it comes to 4,962. And I'm going to highlight it in red at the bottom. We can see the entire verse from Genesis 46:29 comes to 4,962. So it's very much connected to a revelation of this. Let's just read the verse. So we're understanding what that connection actually is. It says, and Joseph harnessed his chariot, and he went up to meet Yisrael, his father, to Goshen. And he appeared to him, and he fell on his neck and wept on his neck for a long time. So this is when finally Joseph is revealed to his father, isn't he? It's just a glorious meeting. This is where we want to get to. There's some incredible gematria. I've analysed this verse previously. Okay, so there is some incredible gematria in that that's definitely related to a revelation of Yeshua being the Moshiach. I'm going to leave this lesson here. Next lesson, I'm going to pick up on those numbers that I said see over for. When I pick up on those numbers, I'll probably go also through this verse to give you a brief of it and see how it's all connected, because it's such a powerful revelation of the Moshiach and who the Moshiach is, that I'll probably go through some of those numbers, but I'll have to leave that till next lesson, and until then I will say shalom. Okay, quick video, because when my son visited, he says you've got to add a human dimension to your teachings. Give a face to the voice. So here's the face behind the voice. 3 things I'd really like to say. If you are inspired by these teachings, which I hope that you are, share them. Share them. Also subscribe to the channel and really enjoy them, because it's wonderful Torah and wonderful teachings that come from a wonderful place, and to me it's all innovative and it's creative and it's intellectually stimulating, and it's I just pour my whole heart and soul into them. So I'm glad to pass them on. There's something I'm really, really glad to share with people. And that's about it. And by the way, you're very fortunate, because I actually put mascara on to do this video, which is, I haven't done that for a very long time. So I should have probably brushed my hair, but never mind. Okay then, so like I said, subscribe, share, shalom.